So things are finally getting juicy back in the UFC. Israel Adesanya makes his return at UFC 305 to fight Dricus Du Plessis for that middleweight belt. Now don't mind my hair, I'm just rocking my Peyton Talbot for today's video. But I couldn't be more excited for this matchup. Now does Israel Adesanya deserve this fight versus Dricus Du Plessis? I don't think so, but I couldn't care less. I'm just happy that we finally get this banger matchup. It feels like over a year now this fight has been brewing. This heated rivalry dates back almost a year ago from now. It really only feels like yesterday we were talking about Israel Adesanya's and Dricus's beef when it comes to who's more African or who is the real African champion. But finally, the match has been made. The fight is booked for UFC 305. We finally get the answers to our questions. Who would win a fight between Dricus Du Plessis and Israel Adesanya? Now, I mentioned this before. I said that Israel Adesanya doesn't really deserve this title shot, and he really doesn't. He's coming off a loss quite a while ago against Sean Strickland, where he got pretty much dominated throughout 5 rounds. He maybe won one round in that fight at most, but it just feels like at this point in the UFC, if you're a big name, if you bring money to the table, the UFC is going to find a way to get you a title shot no matter what. And even if you are Israel Adesanya coming off of a loss forever ago where you got dominated, you still get your automatic rematch. And it doesn't even matter if it's not against the guy you even lost your belt to. He gets one anyways against Dricus Du Plessis. Again, does he deserve it? No. But am I hyped for this? Would I want this to happen? Hell yes. I can't wait for this fight. I can't wait for it to happen. Now, obviously, these are my first initial thoughts, so I'm not going to dive too deep into the stylistic matchup, but I will give my first thoughts, my first take on how I think this fight's going to go. And if I had to predict a winner so far, I'm probably going to take Dricus Du Plessis to get this one done. I know a lot of people are still pretty high on Israel Adesanya, and they're pretty low on Dricus Du Plessis. I don't care how Dricus looks in his fights. I know it looks sloppy. I know he looks untechnical. I know he doesn't look that good whenever he fights. However, he is good. He has KO power, and he might go out there and destroy an Israel Adesanya. And I really don't want to bring up the MMA math argument, but MMA math kind of works for this scenario. Israel Adesanya got dominated by Sean Strickland, and Dricus Du Plessis had a way closer fight than what Israel Adesanya had against him. Personally, I believe Dricus won that fight against Sean Strickland. Still a very close fight. It can go either way. I'm open to the argument for Sean Strickland winning that fight. But however, when you compare Adesanya's performance versus Sean Strickland and compare that to Dricus Du Plessis' performance versus Sean Strickland, there's a clear night and day difference who did better in that matchup, and it goes to Dricus Du Plessis. He had a way closer fight. Even if you don't think Dricus won that fight, he still performed better than what Adesanya did, and I think he has some of the better tool sets to go out there and beat an Israel Adesanya. But I would even go as far to say that Dricus Du Plessis has a somewhat similar style to Sean Strickland. They're very close to each other. The main difference between the two is the fact that Dricus is trying to land big KO power shots on you, while Sean Strickland is just trying to mainly outpoint you. He wants to fight you the same way Dricus does, but I think Sean Strickland has less power in his hands than Dricus Du Plessis, obviously. And of course, Dricus throws a lot of hooks and overhand rights, while Sean Strickland just throws his basic 1-2, and that's pretty much it. Hook every now and then. But what these two have in common between Dricus and Strickland is the fact they want to get to the center of the octagon and they want to bang it out. And I think Israel Adesanya just doesn't really bode well with those kind of guys. People who typically back up Adesanya usually have success in the striking. Now, you could argue the fact that Adesanya is always backing up in his fights, but I think these new middleweights like Strickland and like Dricus Du Plessis, I wouldn't call Strickland new, but I still think Dricus Du Plessis is fairly new to the middleweight division, even though he is champion. But guys like Strickland and guys like Du Plessis have a better approach to their offensive pressure when it comes to striking. And I think Du Plessis can find a shot on the chin of Adesanya, because let's be real here, Adesanya is getting quite old and he's taken a ton of damage in his career so far. I think at this point, we can say that Adesanya has been consistently getting hurt in his fights. Even back to kickboxing, he got KO'd out cold by Alex Pereira. Came into the UFC, had a few fights, had a war with Kelvin Gastelum where he got hurt. Then gets hurt and finished by Alex Pereira in their first fight in the UFC. Obviously gets hurt and dropped by Sean Strickland. I think at this point in Adesanya's career, I think it's safe to say that his chin might not hold up well as he ages. Now, he is only 34 years old. He's not too old just yet to the point where his chin might be completely gone, but I think Dricus Du Plessis is that kind of guy who might show the age of Israel Adesanya. Adesanya's been in combat sports for a very long time. Obviously, we know about his long credentialed kickboxing career. I think at this point, Adesanya is not a normal 34-year-old in the UFC. I think he has a lot more miles on him than some of these other guys. And just to give you an example of this, if this was just a Volkanovski who came into MMA late, came into the UFC late, then I wouldn't be so worried about his chin. But this is an Israel Adesanya who's been in combat sports, who's been taking punches for years upon years upon years now. And now with him taking a year off by the time he fights Du Plessis at 305, I don't think that bodes well for him. It might help his chin out. Taking some time off, I think, obviously helps the chin recover, especially when he got concussed or dropped by Sean Strickland. But one of the main things I felt like kept Adesanya still at the top of middleweight and still champion and having a very, very good reign, a very long reign with a lot of defenses on it, was the fact that he was always active. And I think an inactive Adesanya is not going to be the best version of Adesanya. I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to see the best version of Israel Adesanya. And I think the best version of Adesanya needs to show up for this fight to be able to beat Dricus Du Plessis. But even with that being said, I don't want to fully count out Adesanya's chances versus Dricus. He can go out there and he can beat Dricus. Maybe I might be entirely wrong with this, and we might see the best version of Adesanya just come out of nowhere and be able to piece up Dricus Du Plessis over 5 rounds and maybe even possibly finish him. I don't see Adesanya getting a finish over Dricus. I think Dricus is just way too tough to get finished, but you never know with Israel Adesanya. He might come out with an even larger boob than we've ever seen him have, so he might have just amazing one-punch KO power for this fight. Again, being off for 1 year might have allowed him to get a cycle through, get a little trend or a little bit of some testosterone boosters in him. I don't know. I'm just making up assumptions here. But maybe that 1 year off might not have been just a full find yourself mental moment for Adesanya. It might have been a little bit of a blasting session, if you know what I mean. All I'm trying to say here is I don't think Adesanya was just solely spending time with his dogs like he normally does for this past year. All right, but I'll stop the jokes for now. Adesanya can go out there and he can just style, back up the entire time, low kick Dricus Du Plessis for 5 rounds, land a 1-2, a jab every now and then, just body kicks, leg kicks. He can go out there and just outpoint Dricus Du Plessis is my point. To be fair, there was a picture a while ago that came out of Adesanya looking pretty chunky, a pretty big boy, so maybe he put on some weight for 185. He was already a pretty big middleweight in terms of just stature and height, but if he added some muscle onto that, then maybe he might just be a different level of Adesanya who has insane power. So maybe he can go out there and just completely style bend on Dricus Du Plessis. It is a possibility. And I will dive deeper into this when the fight week comes around. I'm just kind of giving my first initial take right now. So I don't have all of my notes and all this research done on the fight. I'm just giving you top of the head situations or top of the head information that I have. And again, like I said before, Dricus' style doesn't look the prettiest and it might not be the most effective versus Adesanya. Maybe it was just a really bad matchup that Sean Strickland had, or that Israel Adesanya had versus Sean Strickland. And maybe the only person who can go out there and just completely mess up Adesanya is Pereira, because he's bigger and he's stronger and he just has this massive weight advantage with the kickboxing experience on the back end of that. And maybe it is also Sean Strickland who just has one of the more perfect styles to beat Adesanya. And maybe Dricus might not be that guy to have that perfect style versus Adesanya who can possibly beat him. Dricus Du Plessis is open on the feet. He can be hit. He can be tagged. We saw him versus Sean Strickland get tagged a bunch of times. Even when he fought Brad Tavares, he was getting hit quite a bit. His cardio was an issue, but I don't think it's an issue now, so I won't even bring that up. But we've seen Dricus Du Plessis have a hard time getting down Brad Tavares. So maybe if Dricus Du Plessis is losing on the feet, maybe he can go for takedowns, and it might just be unsuccessful versus Adesanya because Adesanya does have very, very good athletic scrambles getting up off of bottom. Let's be real here. The only people to be able to hold Adesanya down was Jan Blachowicz, and that was really about it. So I do think we're going to see Dricus Du Plessis have a hard time getting down Adesanya if he wants to get the fight to the ground. So I guess in those moments when Dricus is going for takedowns, those can be moments for Adesanya to stuff those takedowns, get back on the feet and land that jab and land that low kick and land that body kick and just put it on Dricus. But in my opinion, I think options win fights. I think Dricus' option to go for takedowns and have a kind of at first glance, a good style versus Adesanya. So I think I'm going to give the nod to Dricus Du Plessis to get this one done over Israel Adesanya. I wouldn't be surprised if Adesanya won, but I think Dricus at this point, I think he's kind of underrated. I think people are kind of shitting on Dricus after that Sean Strickland win. I think he's actually really low-key a really good fighter and a really good champion, and I think he'll be champion for quite a bit of time. People might not agree with that, but I think at the very least, Dricus Du Plessis gets past and Israel Adesanya. He might lose his next fight. He might lose in a rematch to Sean Strickland. I don't know. That can be a possibility, but I still think that Dricus Du Plessis gets past Israel Adesanya. He wins that fight. He wins this fight. He beats him. He calls himself the real African. He's the real African champion. You heard it here first from me, I guess. I don't know. Again, I'm going to go back and do some research. I'm going to rewatch some fights and just figure out. I might change my pick. Who knows? But as of right now, as of June 18th, 2024, I'm taking Dricus Du Plessis in a close fight. I think he wins by decision. He might even get a finish over Adesanya. Actually, I think I might take Dricus to win by second round TKO. Who knows? But that's my opinion right now. It might change in the future. Who knows? But with that being said, that's all I have for you guys today. I'm out of here. Like, subscribe, hit that bell icon for notifications. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know your take in the comment section. But I'm out of here, guys.